Good evening and welcome back to Checkpoint. My name is Wanuna. Before I introduce my guests to you and we get into our conversation this evening, National Assembly Speaker Justin Muturi has asked all members of Parliament privy to recent bribery claims in Parliament to record statements with the anti-graft agency, that's EACC, to aid in investigating the scam. But just what went wrong with the 12th Parliament and what is the parliamentary leadership doing to correct that mess? Our political affairs reporter Muremi Mwangi retraces the National Assembly's troubles to the acrimonious August 8th polls and explains why Speaker Muturi is disappointed with his House.
At the peak of the National Super Alliance resistance agenda against President Uhuru Kenyatta's re-election, State House, in a desperate attempt to contain the sweeping political acrimony, stretched its hand into Parliament.
And I can explain that.
Ejecting all presumed Jubilee rebels from leadership of committees, including Firebrand Nandi Hills legislator Alfred Keter, Moiben Silas Tiren, and Marakwet East Kangogo Bowen. But not before the rebels fired a warning.
There are some cartels who are interested in importation of sugar, in importation of fertilizers. That's why they don't want some people in to head agriculture department, because maybe they will not be in a position to do their own things which they wanted to do.
8 months later, the said cartels, it appears, are having a field day in the August House. The latest egg in the face of the 12th Parliament being the alleged hand of sugar barons and dirty money in the Thursday shutdown of the report on contraband sugar.
My colleague here was being tried to be given 10,000. He refused inside the chambers. Therefore, what is happening is that we have gone too low, that I don't know who will remedy on terms of performance of Parliament.
And now, Speaker Justin Muturi has directed Office of National Assembly Clerk to begin recording statements from all legislators who claim to be privy to the bribery saga. The Powers and Privileges Committee, Muturi says, will thereafter review the testimonies and could consider inviting the anti-graft agency EACC to conclude the investigations and deal with the culture.
None of the members were willing to listen to what the report had. In fact, 90% of the members who contributed on the floor had not read the report.
I would just wish someone could just bring me some names of members of NASA who possibly have been compromised. Without any reference to anybody, I would remove them from those committees immediately and leave them without committees.
Our constitution.
But the bribery saga is just the latest of Muturi's frustrations with the 12th Parliament. Last month, Muturi was disappointed with legislators hugging and getting too cozy with key witnesses testifying during the sugar probe. Muturi would subsequently issue a ruling directing that all witnesses should be escorted in and out of parliamentary at all times by a sergeant at arms. Days later, committee co-chairs Kanini Kega and Eden Ali were facing a scandal of alleged alteration of the sugar report long after members had adopted a final document. The said alterations, some members claim, were reportedly to exonerate cabinet secretaries Henry Rotich, Eden Mohammed and Willie Bett, now Kenyan ambassador to India, from the sugar scam. But in a further demonstration of the 12th Parliament's lack of seriousness in its oversight mandate, the sight of empty seats, even during afternoon sessions when no committees are sitting, have become too common. Speaker Muturi is not amused.
Surely, you cannot have 250 members always permanently out of the chamber. It's an embarrassment. It might even call to question whether we need the number 349.
More than 10 million shillings has gone to waste in the flopped contraband sugar probe. And all eyes now turn to the Speaker Muturi-chaired Powers and Privileges Committee as Kenyans await answers on the bribery saga. Muremi Mwangi, KTN News.
So are they MPs for hire? That is what we want to explore tonight. And joining me for that conversation in studio with me tonight is Farah Maalim. He's a former Deputy Speaker in the National Assembly, the 10th Parliament. Thank you for being with us, sir. And thank you, Gladys Wanga, Woman Representative, Homa Bay County. Also joining us live from Runda is Martha Karua. She is a NAK Kenya party leader and also a former long-standing member of Parliament. She's joining us live from Runda. And this, we've seen that story there by Murimi Mwangi, and highlighting just some of what we've seen play out in the past couple of days. So it begins with a claim that there is mercury in sugar. Parliament takes over this matter, investigates. 2 committees joined, Trade and Agriculture, investigate in 10 days. Report is thrown out as shady, given more time. But upon tabling, there's a realization that an amendment or change has been made. Ulterior motive is read into that. At least that's what the chair and a member of that committee told me last week. Were there attempts to bribe, or were there bribes exchanged, money? Did it exchange hands? I'll start with you, Honorable Wanga, ahead of the debate of this report.
Thank you, Sophia. I think what I'd like to say is, as a member of Parliament, on that particular day, nobody approached me with a bribe or with money. But there was a lot of claims of money changing hands. There was a lot of talk on the corridors that members of Parliament were being given money. Did I see it with my own eyes? No, I didn't.
Do you believe it happened?
I suspect there could have been, and this is why I want to agree with the Speaker that investigations should be done. Because the way people, were milling around and moving around, I believe it could have happened.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
What do you make of this, Maalim? You have even during the proceedings, the leader of majority coming out to say that he had to leave a presidential event early to be in the House just so that people do not perceive him to have taken the bribe, and so did the leader of my. Clearly, those money exchanging hands.
These one thing is a fact. We live in one of the most corrupt countries in the world, and money changes hands everywhere.
Yeah.
You want to go into some offices, the first thing those watchmen or the security at the door is, when they greet you very well, they will want to be given something small. That has permeated this society from day one. And a lot has got to do with our history also as a colony, and in that brutal manner in which our colonization was executed by the colonial powers. Different from the way it was done in Uganda, which was a protectorate, and which was also in Tanzania, which was a protectorate. So a lot is then, of course, because of the fact that there is an inherent pathological, instinct to always oppose your oppressors. And the best way to oppose oppressors those days were for the watchmen and the cooks and the house boys, they used to call those days, to steal from the master, and to steal also from the government the way you can, because this was the enemy, perceived as the enemy. What you take from the government, what you take from your master, was a contribution towards the cause, the emancipation or the liberation of the black man. Now, after independence, we needed to go through an evolution, which essentially I should have had a political underpinning in it. One, the leadership that came in must have been, first of all, very frugal in the manner in which they spent the public resources, and at the same time have been corruption-free, like Tanzania did, like Nyerere did.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That way, we would have set a value system for our country. I always laugh when I see people talk about values. What are the values that we inherited ourselves? The values that we inherited from the colonial people, and the one we inherited also from the so-called the first leadership of this country up until now,
is what we are seeing
is what we are seeing playing out. So it's everywhere.
Let me bring in Martha Karua. Do you agree that this, in essence, is a reflection of society, and that Parliament is just staying with the script?
In a way, yes, because members of parliament are members of the society, and it is the society, the Kenyan society, that has chosen people of the caliber of those who are in parliament. So they are a reflection of society. But having said that, it is inexcusable from whatever angle you look at it, for a member of parliament to abdicate the responsibility of representing the interests of those who have elected them and to indulge in rent seeking, in taking bribes. We were in parliament. When I entered parliament, there wasn't much pay or allowances. And although I must admit that even those days there were isolated cases where members would suspect a member or two of having bribed, majority of members were faithfully doing their duty. After the Coker Commission, Parliament salary and allowances were increased so that members of Parliament could devote all their time to their core mandate. But this has not been the case. The more the money, the more corrupt Parliament gets.
All right.
I do remember during the 10th Parliament saying that Parliament is the biggest auction house in Africa. But I think that Parliament I was speaking to was many times better than the Parliament we are seeing today.
Honorable Wanga, you attempted to, and spoke about it in Parliament, an amendment to the report to reinstate what was there initially that had been doctored and deleted and changed with for the CSs, instead of being held responsible, to be investigated further. But that flopped. So what do you say to those who feel this was all a waste of time and a betrayal to Kenyans?
Well, after the report, everybody was looking for this report to look at what the committee had done. So when I looked at the report, I felt, well, the committee had put in quite a bit of work and had done a fair job. But there were areas that needed to be tightened. So my own belief was, rather than throw away the report, which was intended to excuse everybody who had been implicated in the report, why don't we amend the report to strengthen the areas we felt were weak? And this is what the approach I told many of my colleagues, that if we feel this report is weak in some areas, rather than throw it out and have nothing and have zero and have everybody walking scot-free, why don't we amend it so that we strengthen it and so that we have the people who were responsible held responsible?
And anyway, that's what it read before, because the chair was here and said it was changed by the people who are doing the actual writing.
Exactly. So when I read the draft report, himself, Honorable Kanini Kega, was trying to move these amendments himself, but then because he was chair of the committee, he couldn't be, his amendments wouldn't be admissible, because a report that you have submitted and signed and you're immediately amending, it became, technically difficult. But on my own, I'd also said, I feel the Cabinet Secretary Treasury, the Cabinet Secretary Industrialization, the former Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture should not just be investigated. There was nothing more to be investigated. We needed them to be held responsible, because the report itself had said that, the Cabinet Secretary Treasury had allowed, through this reckless gazette notice, had allowed over importation of over 500,000 metric tons of sugar.
So let me ask you
there was nothing more to be investigated. It was clear. It was. So I felt they needed to be held responsible. But that flopped by the same people who said the report was shoddy, are the same people who refused to tighten up the report.
But your leader, chairman of ODM and leader of minority in the National Assembly, was one of those who shot down this report. And he, at some point, as he, made his remarks, said, I don't want to be seen to have benefited. But you do see those who think that quite a number of those members were compromised. Do you see where that is coming from? And also that you did not have even support from your own leader of the party.
Yeah, I think that was surprising. That the majority leader and the minority leaders were speaking the same language was surprising to all of us, because especially MPs from the Sugar Belt, and there were quite a number who supported, including Honorable Washali, who seconded my amendments, Honorable Wangwe, Rosa Buyu, Sama Tandi, Koyo, many MPs from the Sugar Belt felt strongly that it was better to have half a loaf than to have none at all. Because now we have no report, we have nowhere to refer to. Yet the committee had identified the sugar that had mercury, had identified the suppliers that brought the sugar, had identified the reason we actually had excess sugar.
So you were surprised?
So I was very shocked. I was shocked, actually.
Is it common that you see leader of minority and majority, especially on a controversial issues? I mean, there is issues of merit, but this is looking...
Sophia, let me tell you something.
Yeah.
You know, the thing about the manner in which we transact such businesses in this country is that you have everybody having an interest. Everybody. The thing, first of all, by the way, in my own experience, most of the compromising of committees starts with a committee. There is a committee which is there in Parliament. It's not the plenary that people make a lot of efforts to go and compromise. The people who get compromised are the committee members. You understand my point?
Right.
Now look at the kind of charade and the crap they want to try. And I'm sorry to use this kind of a language because I'm sick and tired of this. We've had these things going on for the last 30 years or close to 30 years, and it's always the same game again.
Yeah.
Here is a cabinet. They don't want to go a notch higher. They don't want to go to the bottom of this thing.
Yes.
Before a minister is able to give that window, he has an executive order from the president.
Yeah.
And the president cannot give an executive order before the matter is carried by the cabinet. Now here are people who do not want to find out exactly why the cabinet and the president vague window. But the poor guy out here who now gazettes that because it is in his responsibility to implement the directives of the cabinet and the president for that matter. Rotich is the one who is going to be hammered for that. What Rotich did, I can understand if he's asked, why did you draw down the window? He gave a window of 3 months for this importation to be done in the first place, and then immediately that notice. What do you call it? No, it's not an extension. He did not extend it. He limited it to just 1 month. There's another gazette notice which
there are 3 gazette notices.
Well, at least I saw a second one. The first one that says now the window is only up to 31st of October instead of 31st of December.
So your point is who should
Hang on a minute.
Yeah.
My point is get to the bottom. How did they, first of all, call the secretary, the treasury secretary, and ask him what informed his decision for this. He will say this is the cabinet, this is coming from
but
a directive.
But they appeared before
Can I just
Parliament.
finish?
Yeah.
Can I just finish? The cabinet do not appear through the Parliament as a collective body. Cabinet is the body that directs this country's business here at the government level, at governance level. And the heads of that are the president and his deputy. You get my point? What was that window that was given by the cabinet itself and the direction that was given to the minister?
All right.
Can I just complete? Because we are looking for piecemeals. You want to go and crucify this guy, so you crucify this guy to the exclusion of any other evidence. Go to the bottom of these things. As a cabinet minister, he must have been given that direction by the cabinet. Sorry, as a cabinet minister, that decision was taken by the cabinet.
All right, I want to bring in Martha. Yes.
Yes. Now, once the decision is taken by the cabinet, what informed? What was the window in that cabinet? Because the minutes are there. As long as he has implemented now to the windows, and then the cabinet minister for agriculture was never given an opportunity to come in there to find out exactly what was the
Please let me bring in Karua for a second here, because you're hearing what's being said in studio, Madam Martha and Karua.
Disagreeing.
Yes. Sorry?
I'm disagreeing because once you are given a responsibility, a cabinet responsibility, the decision to operationalize your mandate, you take it in your office. Cabinet papers may be taken for approval, but daily decisions are taken by the minister in that docket or cabinet secretary. It is inconceivable that of sugar can be done at cabinet level. And if it was done, the buck stops with Rotich. Let Rotich say whether the gazettement was ordered by cabinet. And if it was, there will be a cabinet minute. Let the agriculture CS say whether his actions were authorized by cabinet. I think when we talk of cabinet collectively, we are trying to hide behind a blanket. And in my experience, as a minister, I didn't have to go to ask the president when I'm making daily decisions in my ministry. So in a ministry, the buck stops with the minister. In the country, the buck stops with the president. And if in any instance the president has called the minister to give directions, let the minister say so. I would say, as a Kenyan, having been disappointed by Parliament twice on the sugar report, I would challenge the Office of the Director of Criminal Investigations. Let them look at the evidence available and see where the responsibility lies in the 3 dockets that were involved, or in the 2 dockets, Treasury and Agriculture, as far as this importation of sugar goes. If a cabinet minister exercises their authority recklessly, then they can be charged for either action or failure to act. And also, let the overall boss, the president, let him also boldly take action if any of the ministers performed their duties negligently. But you can't take on a job as a minister and then claim that cabinet directed you. Where is your decision making? And as far as Parliament is concerned, I am very disappointed. There are so many members coming from the sugar belt, and you don't have to come from the sugar belt to understand the pain of farmers and also the pain of Kenyans.
I'll be coming back to you. I
personally stopped taking sugar because I don't want to take sugar that we have been told is contaminated. Nobody is telling us the whereabouts of the bulk of the sugar that has been distributed throughout this country. It is highly irresponsible for both cabinet and Parliament to leave Kenyans guessing whether the sugar they are taking is safe.
Honorable Karua, let me bring it to you, Honorable Wanga, because when you were seeking to have this amendment passed, the Speaker asked you to clarify on be held responsible, which is what you wanted put across. What do you tell those who say perhaps you should have gone a step further instead of held responsible, because it was like, what does that mean? It sounds vague, to a recommendation to the appointing authority to sack these ministers?
Yeah, we could in fact have even gone that far. I mean, I didn't see why not. But first of all, I'd like to just agree with Honorable Karua and disagree a little bit with the former Speaker, Honorable Farah, on the issue of the Gazette notice. Actually, there is a communication from the Minister for Agriculture 6 days after the Gazette notice, because you know the Gazette notice of 12th May 2017 has 2 sections. The first section is the section on sugar, and it reads, you know, sugar will be imported by any person.
Duty free.
You know, and it's just any person up to 31st of August, and that it ends there. The second section is the section on milk. The section on milk reads, 9,000 tons of milk shall be imported by milk processors from the Kenya Dairy Board. So you see the specificity of the milk importation, and you see the lack of specificity of the sugar importation. 6 days later, the Minister for Agriculture, Willibet, wrote actually to CS Rotich to say, this any person is not making sense. Who can import sugar? What type of sugar are we importing? I do not think that these are decisions that should be made at cabinet level. At collective cabinet level. These are decisions that were between the Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture and the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury.
So at this point, because we could go over and over the issues, and we have discussed them at length on this show, we've had the committees interview these people, back to, for Kenyans, no answers to date, and as far as the quality of sugar, who's to be held accountable. So what becomes a solution?
In that report, if we had passed it, it indicated that there is sugar in this country that has mercury. One of the recommendations was the destruction of sugar. I do not think that needs to wait for a recommendation of Parliament anyway. I think the sugar that has been confiscated, that is contaminated, should be destroyed anyway. You know, but one of the recommendations was that. And that report was very clear that there is sugar in this country that has mercury, that has copper, that has high moisture content,
Sophia.
that has
All right.
all these things. Whether it is on our shelves or not is the question we are asking. How far have they gone in terms of
And yet the
testing?
CS Interior told the committee that when he talked about mercury, it was a cautionary measure. We want to take a break, and when we come back, I will get to hear more from my guest this evening. Keep your thoughts coming as well. The hashtag is Checkpoint.